Hey beautiful humans, I'm RidersDX and welcome to another riveting episode of Riders Replay. And today, I hope your head has had sufficient exposure to the clouds because, you're gonna need that for some of these games. Today, we visit a dreamy world of Dreamworks, and yes, I came up with that all on my own. Home of some of the most iconic movies of the 2000s and beyond, Dreamworks is just one of the many studios that really tried to milk the licensed video game market for all it was worth during this period. Unfortunately, I am just one of many innocent youthful bystanders that fell prey to this trend, and when I say I actually mean my parents who had to pay for all these shitty games. But amongst the wasteland of fake dreams and promises, are there any gems lying amongst the graveyard inhabitants? Well, let's dig up the grave sites, collect the bones, and see for ourselves. Starting with a fabled legend who reportedly spent his last days dancing at a car wash. I mean, if TikTok had existed during that ancient time period of 2004, he actually would have been a hotshot celebrity. Shark Tale. I chose this movie and game over Finding Nemo as a kid, and I've yet to decide if that was a smart decision or not. This is one of the first games I got on the Xbox. I figured what better way to follow up a legend like Sonic Heroes, right? I don't know what my brother was thinking. I have barely any recollection of the movie besides its pretty insane soundtrack, which was the most faithful to the movie aspect about this game. I just gotta say, I would love to see any streamer out there attempt to stream this game. Like, how far can you get through Car Wash before the copyright gods strike you off your throne? This is the most efficient way to die. The music is probably the best part of this game, although I will say it does get a little obnoxious at times with some music tracks having to repeat over and over again with the levels that can take a while. I mean, I love my funky 90s jams like any other millennial, but sometimes I just want them to shut up about car washes for a minute, man. Shark Tale itself is structured like many movie games around this time, where the developers don't simply stick to one gameplay style and leave it at that. No, Shark Tale has a level-to-level structure and manages to throw in a new gameplay style in every one for the first 5 or so levels. There's levels where you're swimming away from a shark and you need to move in the indicated directions to avoid being devoured, for instance. There's the side-scrolling levels, which is probably the most common one, and well, it's basically a generic 2D platformer, but you're a fish swimming up and down the screen. Kind of feels like a wasted opportunity actually, as I think having these sort of controls in a 3D environment could have resulted in a pretty interesting tiny open world game, especially since the design of the city is actually not bad. There's races, which I really cannot believe are real, and then there's my favorite kind, the Dance Dance Revolution bootleg levels, and it's basically because I love how these arrows look when I get the points. Like, it just looks so f***ing satisfying, like popping balloons without raping your ears. It really amazes me looking back at these games. So many of them thought that putting in all these crazy different gameplay styles was an approach that really worked. Like, in what world does it make sense to make a rushed and low budget movie tie-in game with tons of different gameplay styles that you need to create and implement from scratch? Like, wouldn't it have been much easier to focus on maybe 1 or 2 different kinds of gameplay and just refine that? You see, that's called common sense, which isn't in the employee handbook. Anyway, I always have a fun memory playing this game when I was a kid, but I highly doubt I would ever go back to it in this context. Actually, scrubbing the cobwebs off in my brain made me realize I also owned a PC version of this game. Why did I like dancing fish so much? I don't remember a goddamn thing about it other than the fact that you could customize Oscar's penthouse, and that I had a penthouse that all of my 4th grade classmates were practically begging to be invited to. Now, I personally sat out watching the Bee Movie when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure it came out around the same time that Ratatouille came out, and I gotta say, that film pretty much satisfied their animal interacts with human trope thirst for me during that time. I mean, I have to say, a Frenchman always knows how to magnetically attract my presence. But quite honestly, the Bee Movie would have probably been long forgotten otherwise. I mean, it was a box office failure and critics didn't care much for it. But because the internet is the internet, now this film has a second life as a collection of ridiculous memes. Memes I honestly do not understand and make me feel older than a millennial actually. And that's just not good fun. But putting aside my rapidly aging brain, one thing I understood very clearly was the video game. I will give the game one positive comment. It called itself B-Movie Game. So even before it became a giant meme, it already knew what its eventual fate was. And that kind of witchcraft does not go unnoticed by me. So I just have to acknowledge the sorcerer in the room. Too bad that's the only magic this game used. The B movie game operates pretty much like Shark Tale, i.e. having multiple different gameplay styles segmented into separate levels or minigames. B movie game feels a lot messier though, as it doesn't have a strict level to level structure, but it also sorta does. I think it's easiest if I just play the game. So you start off roaming around the beehive, and the first gameplay mechanic you get to experience is the driving, which has the chaotic control of a GTA game, but none of the fun explosive visual physics that come with it. Seriously, I just crash and crash and crash into all these innocent civilians, and then I just continue to exist. Where sure, no harm will ever befall me, but neither will any happiness. And I just think, what sort of way of living is that really? Funnily enough, that's exactly the mindset Barry finds himself in. No, he really doesn't want to collect honeycombs in this very familiar minigame I can't quite put my finger on for the rest of his life. I mean, yes, what a sad experience this would be. So Barry goes on to try a whole bunch of different jobs, such as driving people to their destinations in a crazy taxi-like layout, racing other drivers, and probably most interestingly, pollinating flowers in the real world. If I could just let one little quip out about the game though, it's the fact that along with all the different gameplay styles being thrown at you, there are just as many tutorials to go along with them, and man, sometimes you just don't want to learn. I seriously felt like half of my time in this game was literally just watching and playing through tutorials because of how often the game would shake things up. And yes, I understand I won't magically know how to play a game I've never touched before, but I also understand I wouldn't have so many classroom lessons if the game didn't change it up so frequently. Anyway, when you're out in the real world with the jocks, that's when you hone in on the gameplay style I was sort of expecting going into this, which is Barry flying around the city doing whatever. Flying just doesn't feel that good to me here. I don't know if the controls are either too sensitive or maybe the camera is too close up to Barry's ass. Whatever it might be, I never felt like I was fully in control of where Barry was going. But the game does look nice. I mean, that fur on Barry is making me feel conflicting feelings. I wanna die. Can I just say this Pixar knockoff of a guy is kinda hot? Oh, you can't. Let me finish. That is until he starts flopping at swatting a bumblebee. Who am I kidding? He can still f me. Quick time events, because no movie tie-in game in the 2000s is complete without them. Probably the most interesting thing I did playing this game was flying as Barry during a rainstorm. You know, it didn't really occur to me how dangerous a rainstorm probably is to something like a bee. But nah, since these raindrops are just as big as Barry himself, it makes sense why getting hit repeatedly by rain would take you down. You do have this innate ability to slow down time and then travel through the town avoiding all the raindrops. But first off, look at how many raindrops there are. How am I supposed to avoid them even like this? Also, it doesn't last forever, so work fast even though you're moving slow. A lot of movie games jump from one idea to another, but damn, the B movie game has to be one of the most insane examples of this. The amount of whiplash this game took me through cannot be understated. I can't say I'll miss my time with the B movie game, but I will miss saying B movie game more than twice within a minute. Did you know they're coming out with a Kung Fu Panda 4? So I figured in my desperate attempts to remain relevant in the conversation, let's take a look at some high quality Kung Fu infused adventures. So I booted up Kung Fu Panda 2 and this is what I saw.
Try a punch. Give me your best shot, now! Punch time! Okay, punch me. Don't worry.
Not even if this was the only video game in the world. I don't know what possessed these freaks to make their tie-in video game for their blockbuster film be a Kinect exclusive title, but here we are. Since that didn't work out, I decided to try out this one called Showdown Legendary Legends. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't a Smash Bros. Like entry here. The game starts off with Poe whining that his master won't let him hold a bloodthirsty tournament where he can beat up all of his friends until he reveals that Poe actually is allowed to. And well, yes, that's pretty much all you need. I've always thought it was surprising that not many of these licensed games have tried the platform fighter genre considering how huge Smash Bros. Ultimately is. But now I see a plausible reason. I think these games are just deceivingly difficult to make. I mean, it looks simple enough. Put the characters in a 2D plane, give them all a certain set of moves, and bam, Smash Bros. Clone done. Except Showdown is sort of a nothing burger to me. First off, the sound design is just very bad. Half of the moments where I think some sort of sound effect needs to be coming out, either absolutely no sound is present, or the one that they did manage to put in there is just, it's like jumping off a cliff to land on a trampoline, but instead it's a deflated balloon, and you become paralyzed. Anyway, Anyway, as for the actual smashing you do here, it's alright. I mean, you have a quick and strong attack. I couldn't really figure out if I was doing the recovery thing right, but to be honest, if you're damaged enough to be knocked off the stage, you're typically not gonna be able to recover. But you know what? Living my genuine, unhinged truth, I couldn't really give a damn about Smash Bros. Beyond a fun casual match with my extremely inexperienced friends. So if you're gonna hand me a subpar version of something I by default don't even care that much about, quite frankly, Kung Fu Panda would be better off selling me a promotion to watch the movies for coupons to my local Chinese takeout place. You know how many times I'd watch those movies of that with you? Life supply of orange chicken, here I come! This is probably one of the most forgettable movies in DreamWorks history, but hey, at least they got Avril Lavigne to voice a possum here.
Dad, was just snow.
But it could have been a predator.
Over the hedge, so I'm a possum.
But the Hello Kitty songstress is nowhere to be found in the video game, which, I'm gonna be real here, is a blessing not at all disguised. I've talked about a few movie games here that tried to incorporate tons of different gameplay styles into it to appease as many of the bottom-dwelling children eating these games up, i.e. me, as possible. And while I've noted at length how I wish these games had a better focus and worked to improve the best ideas they had instead of spreading themselves thin, Over the Hedge did focus, but definitely did nothing but focus. Over the Hedge cashes in on this retrospectively bland trend of a co-op beat-em-up game that was far too common with these titles, but at least games like Nicktoons and the LEGO Star Wars series had the luxury of placing these bland mechanics on extremely beloved characters with rich histories. Meanwhile, no one gives a f about an insanely easy to stimulate squirrel. Seriously, I would be scared if anyone ever gave Hammy a glass of wine because, whew, the world might as well collapse with that level of crazy out in the wild. The game actually starts you off at the very end of the movie and then time jumps a year forward, so that seems like a positive sign in terms of avoiding a haphazard retelling of the movie and incorporating your own storyline. But as far as I can tell, it's literally just a game made up of boring heists for food. Like, yes, I think I would have taken the haphazard retelling of the movie storyline over something so empty. You just walk around, attack mind-controlled animals, and collect stuff over and over again. I literally had to stop after a half hour. Now that I think back on it, I don't even think I liked this game as a kid. Pretty sure I donated the game to my school store or something, who knows. So now my middle school will forever be known for selling torture to one of its students. I love my impact sometimes. Listen man, Madagascar was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Something about Chris Rock's portrayal as Marty always just hit extremely sensitive parts of my body. The same could be said for the children in the game. Oh, by the way, this game has the biggest jump scare I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing. It literally takes a full minute indulging you in this very eerie scene from the movie, only for it to smack you in the face with the beauty of Marty's in-game bone structure. Madagascar took the route of focusing itself more on an action-adventure route, as the game is divided into these sizable levels that take you throughout the movie's whole plot. You get to play as the 4 main animals along with some random moments in the game starring the penguins, like this part where you're fishing in midair. Seriously, look at how huge these sunglasses are on this kid. I would want to steal them right off her too. All 4 animals move in a basic 3D plane with their own special abilities. Marty is a great kicker, as we all know. Alex is really obsessed with hoops and sock cheering sound effects.
You're still a king. Don't let those flying rats tell you different.
Gloria is really fast as long as you're giving her hot peppers. This is the stupidest thing ever when you say it out loud. And Mailman is 1, a hot mess, and 2, a gigantic helicopter that's actually kind of fun just from the visual spectacle of watching him glide across the streets of New York. But that's about the extent of what I really can say about this game, because as unique as these characters sound, it really is just a basic action-adventure platformer where you go from point A to point B. Sure, each level has different objectives to go through. One level has you doing stealth, my favorite thing in the world when it comes to movie games. Another one has you trying to travel amongst the streets of Manhattan trying not to get killed. But I mean, it's not even worth really diving into beyond that. For a game that has so much personality to take advantage of, it really doesn't take advantage of any of it. Except for this weird part where you can pop balloons and increase the pitch of Marty's voice.
That was enough balloons. Let the hilarity ensue right on schedule.
I suppose I did have fun with this game as a kid, but there's certainly a reason I've never felt inclined to revisit it up to this point. Oh well, I guess I'll just go and visit an actual zoo instead. You're not gonna kick me to you-know-what, are you? Well, I can't think of any other major DreamWorks franchise to go to at this point. You know, their legacy is a lot smaller than I remember it. First of all, flops. But second of all, it almost feels like there's some sort of swamp-coated creature-sized hole in the manuscript here. What could it... Hello there, Shrek humans. I am RidersDX, and today we're gonna Shrek. Shrek is a way of life. Shrek is a faith I'm a devout follower to. So in an effort to completely immerse myself into this new world that has enlightened every facet of my prophetic life, I will tattoo every moment of the film franchise where Shrek performs holy flatulence onto my brain cells. And also play a whole bunch of Shrek games. Because it's easy to sit there and say you've watched all the movies, right? You know all the characters' likes and dislikes. You own the helmet to truly embrace the ways of the ogre. But it takes a whole nother level of dedication to sit here and slay myself through what I can only imagine to be a true hodgepodge of games in terms of quality. Because not even the almighty ogre god was immune to the unfortunate curse of every 2000s movie franchise. The wrath of the licensed game. The initiation has begun. I feel myself being blessed by the master's touch already. We begin our journey with the game that started it all, sort of. This is Shrek Extra Large, an enhanced version of the original Shrek game for the Xbox. So this game actually takes place after the movie. Shrek is delivered a message by the magic mirror that Fiona has been captured by the evil wizard, Merlin. So Shrek must travel to Merlin's dark tower fortress of pure evil, but an impassable fog has been laid across the fairy tale lands. The fog and Merlin's fortress can be passed through the completion of good deeds, which basically translates to completing a bunch of quests for losers to progress throughout the game. Now, I am in no way a fairy tale expert, but I like to think I crawl out of my boulder every now and then to be aware of all the ones Disney digested. So with that in mind, I'm pretty sure 90% of these fairy tale characters are completely made up. What fairy tale has henchmen with lollipops as their eyes? Also, ice cream guards are also a thing. What fairy tale is this? The only one I think I honestly recognized was Little Red Riding Hood, and she just looks wrong. Why does Shrek's face remind me of, oh, I don't know, as if their goal with designing it was to make him cuter by giving him a face akin to Alvin from the Chipmunks. Like, it looks oddly cute and ugly at the same time, and I've now become an insomniac. One thing that became clearer than my kitchen floor was that because there's no navigation system in place and because the environments just look the same everywhere you go, it is super easy to get lost. I got lost in the tutorial level. I debated keeping that to myself as it probably says a lot about my sense of direction. But I guess that ship sailed. I mean, there are signs that would have told me where to go, but you guessed it, the camera here is another potato, and a rotten one at that. But hey, at least you can collect onions. That's my favorite vegetable, so it's very thoughtful that they are a part of this adventure. I love how they open you up emotionally! Cutscenes in this game are some of the most hilarious things I've ever seen in a video game. So the developers tried to animate cutscenes in this game, but all they really consist of is awkward zoom-ins to the characters during the idle animations with zero attempts at lip-syncing to be found. And then afterwards, the narrator takes over with a storybook driven summary of what the cutscene was trying to tell you. Like, I honestly think they should have just used the storybook format exclusively if this is as far as they were willing to go to make the cutscenes. Anyway, the way this game is structured is Shrek gets dropped into these little sandboxes and Shrek has to go around and complete the task of the levels before being able to move on to the second sandbox. So getting lost is a very common theme for me. But while the level design leaves a lot to be desired, the aspect of the game that honestly smacks you in the face is Shrek's controls. First off, Shrek is able to reach speeds here that honestly make me feel like I'm playing Sonic Adventure sometimes. I mean, maybe Shrek is actually the god of speed. He also has a very janky wall jump mechanic that, if you can get a handle of, could land you in some very interesting locations. This is why it in no way surprised me when I saw that the game had some speedrunning interest. It's pretty much a game made for something like that, intentional or not. I'll be honest, I think this game is terrible. While the jank is entertaining at times, it controls like a tractor trailer and disintegrated my love for video games ever so slightly whenever I had to play through it. But on the other hand, it's such a weird and haphazardly put together game that I don't think I'll ever forget its little intricacies. For instance, how Shrek sounds like he's eating the heart whenever he collects one. Or how this egg child saying, "Put me in my nest" sounds so demonic. Or that hypnotic dancing cow that wouldn't stop showing up. It's a game of a lot of that 2000s janky charm that I have a very complex thought process for in terms of how much I love and simultaneously hate it. So the tiebreaker is that there is no donkey. 0 out of 10. But it is at this point that TDK has been disinvited from the party, exiled from the kingdom, told to go to the principal's office because they gone f***ed it up for the last time. And in their place was none other than Activision. Well, I guess it's an upgrade in quantity. I will say, though Activision was creating movie games like candy around this time, for every 10 or so bad apples that fell from the tree, sometimes a scrumptious, rich, dimension-bending one would occasionally land in our hands. And my fellow ogres, this game was one of those godlike apples. Shrek 2 on the surface was just another soulless attempt at the movie tie-in, and with Shrek having blown up the way that he did, the team honestly had even less reason to make a game of a certain quality, because they knew it was going to sell due to how huge Shrek had become. With that being said, when trapped in the licensed movie game universe we are currently inhabiting, they slayed. I wouldn't say Shrek 2 is a masterpiece that should be studied in college courses for years to come. However, in a world where Shrek 2 was supposed to be nothing but a New York City trash can, it turned out to be the Empire State Building. Shrek 2 sticks close to the source material unlike the first game, but it does expand upon the story in ways that truly benefit the video game universe it is in. First off, Shrek 2 is another one of those multiplayer co-op adventures that were really popular around this time. Shrek 2 strikes a solid balance between mind-numbing beat-em-up extravaganza and puzzle-infused platforming though. As a kid and even now, I never truly felt like the game was dragging. A big reason for this though was due to the multiplayer focus. I played this game with my brother and friends excessively as a kid, and we had a blast playing as Shrek and all his friends. One of my favorite parts of the game is the array of characters you're able to play as. Sure, you've got Shrek, Donkey, Fiona, and Puss in the fray, but beyond that, the game loops in tons of other fairy tale characters into the mix like Gingerbread Man, Little Red Riding Hood, and the Big Bad Wolf. This is a great way to expand beyond the movie, including other characters that help to elaborate on certain events in the movie it may not have been able to focus on. Plus, it's just fun playing as these characters, you know, especially because they all have their own special abilities to set them apart. Another reason Shrek 2 just sort of aces the multiplayer aspect in ways a lot of other similar games lack for me is how it makes every player feel like a valuable part of the team. Like I said, every character has their own special abilities integrated seamlessly into the game. Shrek can throw enemies and objects, Donkey can headbutt into anything, Puss can walk on tight ropes, etc. Not only this, but there's also the iconic hero time at the end of most levels, where a single character is pulled into a challenge they need to finish to complete the level. This is a ton of fun with multiplayer because I found myself rooting for whichever friend or family member was doing the hero time, and it creates this fun cooperative environment. Plus, these segments are often different enough from the main game that they feel refreshing when done. This was one of the few Shrek games I owned as a kid, and if you couldn't tell, I look back on this game pretty fondly. But playing it now, I can sort of see some of the nostalgia blockades begin to break themselves down. As much fun as I had and still have with this game, I do have to admit the style of gameplay is kinda outdated. The pure basic mechanics of the game is an action-adventure beat-em up, and well, it gets stale pretty quickly no matter what game in this style you're playing. Shrek 2 does do a decent job at varying it up with things, but at the end of the day, this is a gameplay style I'm glad was left back in the 2000s. Not to say I don't see value in co-op gameplay as a whole, but the whole rummaging through a small space, mashing the attack button constantly, move on, repeat thing is not a fun pastime anymore. It no longer entertains me for long stretches of time. I have evolved, I have grown, and have found other ways to express my love for Shrek. But nonetheless, Shrek 2 is always going to be the HBIC for me when it comes to these kind of games. Despite how mundane this sort of game can be, Shrek 2 still manages to infuse that fairy tale charm into the formula and be a solid experience in its own right. On a really random note, there's this one level in the game that's an entire quick time event against Puss in Boots. I don't know what was put in the sauce of this level, but I get this weird sense of love and amazement whenever I play this. It's literally just a dumb quick time event that lasts 5 minutes, but being able to press buttons to the beat of this kick-ass song and watching Puss and the characters practically dance through the battle, I don't know. It's something I truly can't wrap my head around. It's something that gags me every time I see and play through it.
Heads up! Steer right!
One life down, 8 to go.
I may switch careers to a dancing vigilante at this point. The sauce is just too irresistible. So if one train wreck and one masterpiece, where does this leave the Dirt entry? Shrek the Dirt is probably the most straightforward adaptation of the series thus far. It's like Activision had enough of the tomfoolery of the previous Shrek games and with the waggle of their finger, threatened a maze to make the most movie game that ever been created. No more fun! It literally consists of a level-to-level structure based on events loosely based on the film's plot. I've come to realize through playing these games that I care about movie games sticking closely to their counterparts about as much as I care about what your mom is doing while you're watching this video. It is significantly more important to me for a game to be fun in its own right, no matter what it has to do to get there. But of course, going in either direction does not necessarily guarantee a masterpiece, as we all know.
Man, Shrek, you were amazing! I just love a Royal Rumble.
I think Fiona's going to be angry.
Oh, definitely. And don't forget about her mom. She gonna be really angry. And the princesses, they get mad just getting dressed in the morning. Don't ask me how I know that.
Donkey.
Of course, there's Raoul. You know he gonna get all snippy about what you did to that wig.
Donkey looks so dead in the eyes, but his voice performance in the game is top notch. Like, he never fails to make me laugh by saying the most mundane things. Anyway, why are Shrek's loyal servants attacking him before we're a minute into the game? That's something I quickly realized about the game. It sticks super close to the plot of the movie, but because it is a game, it has to find nearly any excuse to have enemies try to beat the fuck out of Shrek, since the game is structured as an action-adventure beat-em-up. So yes, multiple points of this game will have Shrek and his pals beating up random thugs or whatever that, if you thought about it, are brought into these situations that don't make any sense. Great example is when Shrek, Donkey, and Puss are setting off to get to Arthur. The game spends 2 levels having you battle pirates that are apparently trying to take over the ship they're using. Or when you're at Arthur's school, it's flooded with witches that allegedly are from one of the witches Prince Charming is working with. Any excuse to get Shrek into a brawl is utilized here, and I'm just flabbergasted at the lengths the game goes to in doing that without making Shrek seem like a deranged street fighter. On the other hand, the game does make a valiant attempt at recreating some of the movie's most important scenes.
Something I need to tell you.
Well, can it wait till I get back?
No,
What was that? One more time.
Shrek,
What? Don't you get it, Shrek? You're gonna be a daddy!
Santa Maria!
I mean, which is the movie and which is the game? You wouldn't be able to tell me, would you? One cool thing about this game is that it lets you play as 6 characters. I mean, it's a far cry from the variety of Shrek 2, but still, at least we still have palate cleansers. Shrek, Donkey, Puss, and Fiona are the obvious choices here. Arthur is a reasonable choice, but then the 6th choice truly perplexed me. It was Sleeping Beauty, but not only was it Sleeping Beauty, but we got 2 practically full levels with her before we even touch Fiona with our controller. And I'm just sitting here wondering, why? It'd been a long time since I saw Shrek 3, but I feel like it would have stuck out to me like a sore thumb if Sleeping Beauty had been as major of a character as the game was making her out to be. The irony of a princess named Sleeping Beauty taking down a tower full of guards is not lost on me. She also was a pretty funny addition overall because of this dumb scene.
Deep in the catacombs beneath the royal castle, Sleeping Beauty searched frantically for her imprisoned friends. As I was saying, Sleeping Beauty searched frantically. Searched frantically because her friends' very lives depended upon her.
you don't have to be so rude.
Honestly, if they found a way to incorporate her sleeping into the gameplay like that didn't immediately sucked, I would mail Maze flowers. But overall, Shrek the Third is, as Arthur said repeatedly in this game,
This is so lame.
listen, Shrek Extra Large may have been terrible, but it at least had entertaining jank that'll live in my mind for an eternity. Shrek the Third is just okay. It's not a failure at all, and is a perfectly functioning game, but it's almost like ordering the whitest and most plain piece of cake at your local bakery. It's not offensive, it's not disgusting, it's not incompatible, but it is nothing. How many licensed video games came out around this time that adopted the single player level structure with beat 'em up mechanics? The game looks pretty solid for its time, and the voice acting is pretty decent as well. The game literally has all the pieces put together, which is a lot more than can be said for tons of other licensed games around this time. But I just don't care about this one. It gives me nothing in the most unexciting way possible. No pizzazz, no it factor, just a game you turn in to check off all the boxes in your multi-millionaire movie campaign. The only fruity thing about this game is Donkey in his dragon costume. He looks so cute. And that, my friends, is the conclusion to the all too important Shrek trilogy that Dreamworks is practically defined by. My magical friend Swiftball has something to contribute. I don't know what you're trying to imply here. Anyway, if there's any Dreamworks games I might have missed, then let me know in the comment section and feel free to petition the death penalty for me. I mean, it's the only feasible outcome from not playing every single piece of garbage to come out of this company for this video. Perhaps I can be swayed to come back and finish what I started if the ever-longing fear of being deceased is looming over my head. But that's your job. Anyway, this is RidersDX. Shrekin' out. Honestly, if they'd found a way to... Oh my god. My mouth hurts. Oh my god. This is painful.